We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
Who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL Podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson. It's our midweek Wednesday show. We're live on YouTube. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. How you doing, man?
good. You?
It's good to see you're in the seat at the start of the show this time.
Don't know what you're talking about.
I didn't realize on that clip it had something zooming right through the camera when we started the other day.
I mean, look, sometimes you gamble that you've got enough time to make it to the drink fountain and back again. And sometimes that gamble doesn't go your way.
You could do that in 8 seconds?
I could. I made it there and I made it back. The problem was the stupid drink thing takes like an hour and a half to fill a cup.
So you didn't calculate properly.
I was only judging my part of this.
Yeah.
I knew that I had the speed to make it there and back.
At least you know your speed.
What I didn't realize was just how slow that machine fills a cup of water.
So today's show, we've got to talk a little Monday Night Football. Bills-Titans. Incredible game. Another awesome game on Monday night on, just in primetime in general. The NFL has really delivered those particular games. We'll have a little Thursday night football preview. Baker Mayfield out. Is he officially out?
Yep.
I know they recommended that he should be out. He's going to.
No, I'm pretty sure he's out.
The Browns are going to take that recommendation. Case Keenum's getting the start. So we'll preview Browns and Broncos this week. And talk, we've got some emails, and we appreciate those emails. We want to get more emails from you. NFL Podcast at PFF.com. Continue to email. We had a bunch, actually, this week, and at least one makes the cut here. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. So where do you want to start?
Monday Night Football, right?
All right, let's start with Monday Night Football. The Tennessee Titans win, moving to 4-2. What a perception change. Of course, the Titans just lost to the Jets a couple weeks ago. And, the Titans, it's been like an uncomfortable season for the Titans. The offense up and down and a lot of drops. And King Henry, we had a whole PFF daily on Derrick Henry and talking about if he was an MVP candidate. But the Titans are 4-2 now, just like the Bills. And the perception for both teams is all over the place. What are your thoughts on that game and the crazy finish?
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about it a lot on the daily, that Derrick Henry is just different to everybody else. It was one of the first PFF dailies we ever did, asking, hey, we know running backs don't matter, but does Derrick Henry matter? Is he different? And I think the conclusion all the way back then was, yeah, he does. He is breaking the rules that we have for running backs and all the things we know about how much they're a product of everything around them and, the sort of unsustainable things being unsustainable and eventually coming back down to earth. They don't appear to be with Henry. And, our guy Tej has run some numbers showing that, look, generally speaking, the more carries a running back gets, the idea that he gets stronger as the game goes on, generally it's not true. It's random, right? The more, you look at the graphs, and the more carries running backs get, they go all over the place. Some go up, some go down. It's completely random. There's no, signal in the noise. And then you get Derrick Henry, and it goes up and up and up, and it Derrick Henry is different. Now, again, whether or not it comes back down to earth at some point is debatable. It may do, but he's reached the Tom Brady category for me in terms of I'm not looking for that anymore. At some point, Tom Brady is going to stop playing like the best quarterback in the NFL.
You're not looking for regression. You're not waiting for that one game
I've given up.
There it is.
I've given up anticipating it. At some point, Brady will no longer be the best quarterback in the NFL. But given that he's 44 and looking better than he's ever looked before, I'm done searching for that point, right? It should have already hit. It hasn't. I have no earthly idea when it's going to hit. So I'm not going to go searching for it. It's going to happen eventually, and then we can talk about it then. But for now, I'm not looking for the regression the way I would be with other players. Derrick Henry, it's the same. Maybe at some point, Derrick Henry comes back down to earth and looks human. But until then, we just have to accept that he is the unicorn that everybody keeps thinking that they have when they fork over giant contracts or when they draft a guy in the top 4, whatever it is. Derrick Henry right now is that guy.
The comparison I'll make, I think, is Tyreek Hill and his speed on the field, where it's like, man, there aren't many NFL players who just look that much faster than other NFL players, and Tyreek Hill has that. I think Henry has that ability where a lot of the perception of the running back getting stronger in the fourth quarter, I think, is founded upon just people playing or being around football their entire life, and it was actually true. You know, it was true probably in Pop Warner. You didn't want to tackle the big dude. It was true in high school. There's probably some truth to it in college, where there's a big discrepancy between talented players. You know, there's just a bigger talent gap in college. But in the NFL, where the talent gap is tighter, you'd be hard-pressed to find legitimate NFL games where NFL players are sitting there in the fourth quarter not wanting to tackle a running back, right? Derrick Henry has that, though, right? There are times, especially in the fourth quarter, where Derrick Henry legitimately does look bigger and stronger and carries 20 through 30.
He is bigger and stronger.
But he maintains that bigger strongerness while everyone else is actually getting worn down. And I think it's similar to Tyreek Hill. There are other guys who run 4.2 and 4.3, but Tyreek Hill is always the fastest player on a given play and looks like it, like he's playing at a different speed. Derrick Henry might have that ability to satisfy that theory that you wear teams down in the fourth quarter.
I'm sure there is something to the idea that if you are able to keep going the same pace, the same intensity all the way through the game, at some point it is a thing. Like, you are worn down more in the fourth quarter than you were earlier in the game physically, and now there's a 250-pound dude running at you at full speed again. Like, at some point you just don't want a piece of that. There has to be something to that. Now, it doesn't bear itself out for pretty much any other player, but how many Derrick Henrys are there? How many 250-pound guys that can outrun you the distance if they get a crease exist?
The other thing I think that makes Henry really good is other teams are truly accounting for him. And so the rules that we used, so to speak, to come to the conclusion that running backs are the most interchangeable position in the NFL, I think still hold true. The rules being rushing production is generally a product of box count, right? Run blocking, actually having a good pass game where defenses have to account for it. And there are running backs around the league who do get to run against lighter boxes and have more holes and maybe only have to make one guy miss instead of 4. Henry is facing more 8-man boxes than any running back in the league and maintaining his production. And then your favorite stat, yards after contact, him having more yards after contact than most teams actually have rushing yards is insane and crazy. He's got 46 more carries than the next closest ball carrier. So it's high volume in unideal running situations. And that's why, like, his actual efficiency might not be there, because he's gonna get stuffed. There are times you're gonna get stuffed against an 8-man box, but most running backs would probably be averaging about 3 yards per carry in Derrick Henry's situation.
What was really interesting about that game, though, on Monday night is that the Bills were not really stacking the box against him. Like, they had light boxes pretty much the whole way. They were doing that thing of, we're going to invite you to run because it's less dangerous than it is throwing the ball deep down the field to Julio Jones and to A.J. Brown. So we're going to back up. We're going to let you have the favorable box count, and we're going to rely on our defense being better than it's been in the past to be able to stop you. And early in the game, it was working.
Yeah, there were several plays where they did a nice job.
And then
Talele made some nice plays, yeah.
50% of the 8 or more man boxes that Derrick Henry faced, he faced in the fourth quarter. Like, once Derrick Henry showed that, boom, busted through one, goes 75 yards and a touchdown, all of a sudden it was like, this has started to not work anymore. Now we got to start loading up the box count. And it's almost like that has the opposite effect to the one you want it to, because it's like when teams used to load up against Adrian Peterson. And the problem, like, yes, generally speaking, if you load up the box, you're going to have more success against the run. But when you don't, like when you screw it up, when you miss, he's gone. Like, boom. It's not just a bad play, it's gone the distance. So I think you run that risk with Derrick Henry that when you load up the box, okay, it will help you stop him, but if one guy misses a tackle, you're still in trouble.
But more importantly, then it opens up the pass game. And Ryan Tannehill was having a lot of trouble completing passes early in the game. He was like 4 for 12 at one point. Had one of his big completion was the ball that hit, was it Teron Johnson? It hit Bill's defender in the head, and then Julio somehow catches it out of bounds.
What an insane catch that was.
That was ridiculous. So
the idea, by the way, the thing about that catch that was most impressive is that, like, tracking it over the sideline, watching it sort of come down, midway through, he takes his eye off the ball, looks for where the sideline is, and gets back on the ball again so that he can not just catch it, but make sure he toe taps on the sideline.
Why can't he do that in the end zone?
I don't know.
Why can't he do that for a touchdown every now and again?
But that's insane. Like,
that's what the fantasy folks are asking.
The ability to be able to, I mean, it's one thing to just keep tracking the ball and make that catch would have been insane. To have the self-awareness to take your eyes off the bouncing ball, find the sideline, and get back on it before you make the catch is madness.
So Ryan Tannehill played a lot better in the second half. And so this is one of those where, like, the old football theory kind of makes sense a little bit. And this is what
Derrick Henry is single-handedly setting the league back like 8 years.
But I mean, this is what McVay talks about, Shanahan talks about. By the way, this year, the highest graded passer, just PFF passing grade against an 8+ man box, is Ryan Tannehill. And I do think this might be, we may have misread this a couple years ago, because there was fair analysis that said Derrick Henry didn't really become special until Ryan Tannehill took over. That's the history of Derrick Henry's career. Outside of a couple games here and there, on the Thursday night game, the 99-yarder, the stiff arms from hell, and the whole deal, there was a couple breakout games, but he didn't become special until Ryan Tannehill took over. But at the same time, Ryan Tannehill didn't become special until he had Derrick Henry, 8-man boxes. I wonder if it's just this perfect marriage of the two. And again, from an analysis standpoint, you want to say, well, Henry depends on Tannehill, and Tannehill maybe it's just both of them work better in this particular situation.
It's starting to look now that Derrick Henry was providing all of those opportunities to Marcus Mariota, who simply wasn't taking them, and therefore Derrick Henry's life never became easier. Whereas all of a sudden, Derrick Henry provides the same opportunities to Ryan Tannehill, who is one of the best graded quarterbacks in the NFL when play action and against 8-man boxes and all those kinds of things, which has a reactionary effect on the defense. So now all of a sudden the defense has to go, whoa, now we got to back up and defend the pass, and all of a sudden Derrick Henry gets better opportunities. So it's like Derrick Henry is starting to look like the source point of all of this. But it is true that without Ryan Tannehill, or more to the point, with Marcus Mariota, it didn't matter. Because as long as you only have to focus on Derrick Henry, you can limit the damage he does. But the second you have a complement that can take advantage of what Derrick Henry opens up, now all of a sudden everybody's life gets easier.
Since 2019, stacked up a couple seasons to see where Tannehill ranks. Number 2 PFF passing grade behind Russell Wilson with an 8-man box. And yards per attempt, number 1 in the NFL. Tannehill at 10.3. You mentioned Tage, the great Tage from our PFF analytics team. Again, he's done some studies on Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, 3 quarterbacks who have had more 8-man boxes than others, and also had more success in those particular situations. And that goes to this whole idea of, like, the mid-tier quarterbacks and what you want to do. How are you making the most of those quarterbacks? And I think that's a fair way to do it. So, I mean, we might pivot into a Steelers discussion and what their mentality was coming into this year, even though it's not being executed. But I think what makes the Bradys and Mahomes and Rodgers and those guys still more special is that they face 5- and 6-man boxes and still pass against it. Right. The Tannehills and Cousins and Bakers of the world, maybe this is where you say product of the system. They do have more favorable, bigger passing lanes, bigger play action lanes because of defenses looking at that running game.
At Tej, TEJFB Football Analytics on Twitter, if you want to follow Tej's stuff. He's did good things.
Yeah, so Tannehill, 10.3 yards per attempt with the 8-man box. Number 3 on that list is Jimmy Garoppolo. Number 4 on the list is Lamar Jackson. So Jameis Winston's up there too. Tannehill and Garoppolo, 1 and 2. So Garoppolo, another guy, the Shanahan rushing attack, does a great job with their play action concepts against the 8-man box.
The other thing to come out of that game was, at the death, they decided to run a quarterback sneak with Josh Allen to try and win the game rather than kick the points, go to overtime, try and win it in overtime. And they didn't get it. They got stuffed. Josh Allen didn't get the conversion. The Titans take over game. And there are some people that criticize that decision.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, if the Bills had Taylor Lewan at left tackle, maybe things are different.
That's one of the most cringy things I've ever seen in my life.
Look, we've all made mistakes.
Yes. Have you ever made a mistake that egregious on television?
Not on television. I've made many egregious mistakes.
I can't imagine actually making that. So for anyone that doesn't have any idea what the hell we're talking about, Chris Broussard went on TV and said that the big problem with that sneak was that the Buffalo Bills starting left tackle Taylor Lewan had gone down earlier in the game, and some backup dude named Deion Dawkins was in there, and he got beat, and that's why the sneak failed, and they didn't convert. Now, obviously, anybody that knows football knows that Taylor Lewan is the starting tackle for the opposite team. And in fact, somewhere in the deep recesses of Broussard's brain, he knew that as well, because he said Titans to start with and then corrected himself because his entire rant was built off this thing. And he's like, no, that doesn't make sense. The Bills, Taylor Lewan. So basically his entire point was ranting, calling the team idiots for running this whilst he had the wrong player on the wrong team.
My take on that is that is the hot take culture taking over, because he had to go into this TV show with a very, very hot take and a different one, right?
Yeah.
And the different one is, it's the left tackle's fault on the QB sneak. Granted, 99% of sneaks are, in the A gap.
I can't
two
imagine.
gaps away.
I can't imagine coming back on TV having made that that mistake.
I think
the worst feeling in the world, one of the worst feelings in the entire world, is having said something like that, and then when it clicks in your brain, and you're like, oh no, I did something really stupid.
But
now,
I think
most
those
of the
mistakes happen.
Yeah, but most of the time you do that and it's not on national television. So
right.
It's not, it feels terrible. And we've doing this or doing Sirius or whatever, you've made mistakes. It's usually not as egregious than that. But I've done radio hits or something where I've read the wrong stat and it's been, you're like, no, and you feel bad, right? But it's usually not quite this egregious, and it's usually not on that level of scale. But the point is, at some point, he now has to go back on TV, and it's like, all right, fire up the next one. You're like, but look what I just did. I made an absolute ass out of myself. I can't go back on TV ever. I have to go live in a small box under the stairs in, Delaware. I can never show my face in public again.
The problem was that the whole take was built around that.
Yes.
It's not the mistake. The mistake, I think I went on radio one time the year that the Big 12 started. They first had their, the first conference championship game that they had. And I was rambling about how, the Big 12 doesn't have a championship game and this and that. And I was on college, ESPNU college radio. They were probably like, this idiot doesn't realize they got a game this year. I've made mistakes like that. But he said it so forcefully,
but it's not just
so powerful. But that's what you're inspired to have.
It's not just that the take was built off that, but it's that the take was slamming somebody else for being dumb. And it's look what idiot thing you did.
And who's this Dawkins guy? Well, he's the starter for the Bills.
Based off this thing that I have completely ass about face. It was just so bad. But anyway, there were people that thought it was the wrong decision. And then there was Chris Broussard who thought it was the wrong decision based off the fact that he doesn't know who the starting left tackles for either team are.
So let's recap the decision again.
Okay.
First off, Josh Allen with a superhuman effort on third down. Just incredible. I thought he was there, but he was a little short.
Yeah.
Always trying to leap over defenders. Almost converts. Now it's 4th and inches. It's less than a yard. Actually,
the 2 or the 3 wasn't 4th and goal. It was a couple
of yards to go. Inches to go, and then you had a few more yards away from the end zone. Next Gen Stats has had some good work on this because they do have because of the chips and the shoulder pads for players, they have been able to separate 4th and 1s. And so not all 4th and 1s are created equal. There's a difference between half a yard, a full yard, and the whole thing. This is less than a yard. And the Bills are down 3.
From the 3-yard line.
Yeah, so the Bills are down 3. So your options are pretty much a gimme field goal to tie it up.
With 22 seconds left on the clock.
With 22 seconds, the Titans, and I know we talk about this every week, like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, teams can get into field goal range. You're really limiting that ability here.
That's really pushing it, but it's not. You can't dismiss the possibility.
You can't dismiss that possibility.
That they score again.
There is always a possibility that we'll talk about the odds in a second, but Bills presumably kick a field goal.
Right.
The Titans presumably don't get back into field goal range, and we're going to overtime.
Yeah.
And here's the key, right? The Bills are the favorite. And this does matter. So the Bills are the favorite. If they go to overtime, it's 50-50 theoretically.
Yeah. It's not a 50-50 proposition almost ever, because you do know things about these teams. Like the teams are almost never evenly matched. So it isn't just we go to overtime, and then it's 50-50. Because it isn't, right? Like it wasn't 50-50 going into the game. Like there was a line. The point spread said one of these teams was a favorite almost every single game. And in some games, it said they were a huge favorite. So the idea that we go to overtime and suddenly it's anybody's game is not usually true.
On the other hand, the exception, Derrick Henry. What I'm wondering, if he's the exception and he truly is stronger in the fourth quarter and overtime, we've seen him take games over in the fourth quarter and overtime. I wonder if that had something to do with the Bills' decision. Yeah, you're the favorite. On paper, you're the better team. You're supposed to be the best team in the AFC. You're number one in PFF power rankings coming in. You're probably top of mind, right? And but Derrick Henry's on the other side, and we don't want to play him in overtime.
I mean, sure, that's part of it. I also think, if you ever have the opportunity to just win the damn game in like one or two plays, do it.
I agree.
Don't. Anything can happen in overtime. It's not that it's like it becomes a 50-50 proposition, but anything can freaking happen. Like, you might never see you might lose the coin toss, they score a touchdown, Derrick Henry rattles off 95 yards, you never even see the ball.
Yeah.
Well, there's your 50-50 proposition, well done. Like, just try and win the game in the one or two plays you have here. So they end up going for the sneak, and they didn't get it. Now, I was kind of looking at this, and what was interesting about this sneak is usually the quarterback just takes the ball, either tries to leap over the pile, buries himself into the A gap, like either side of the center's butt cheek, and just tries to get the yard, right? Allen didn't. He bounced the whole gap over and tried to get into the B gap, which had some space pre-snap, but that space was very quickly removed by the fact that a defensive end plowed his way inside the backup, Deion Dawkins, who was obviously in there for Taylor Lewan.
That play doesn't usually happen, but you remember the previous sneak that he had, right? Allen's previous sneak at the goal line earlier in the game, where he did try to take it outside the tackle, and three unblocked defenders, boom, popped him and stuffed him.
I knew I hadn't imagined that.
That did happen, right? So he did do it a similar way previously.
So all of a sudden, I came out of that, and I'm like, why does Allen, a 245-pound huge dude who barrels over people in the run game, why does he keep trying to bounce the ball outside of the A-gaps? And actually, when you look at how the Titans defended that play, it was really well done. They shifted in tight late and immediately took away the A-gaps and sort of forced him to bounce outside. And then the alignment of the end was inside of the tackle, who just didn't have a shot really of making that block. And when you look at the last time he failed on a third and fourth or one play, the 49ers did a very similar thing to him. They stacked everybody up tight. They forced him to essentially bounce it outside, and then one inside of the tackle and stuffed him again. Now, what was different is this time the 49ers took away all the gaps. He had just nowhere to go. This time, if he'd actually gone right instead of left, if he'd gone to the right-hand side B gap instead of the left-hand side, there was literally an open gap. He would have actually made it then and been comfortable. But anyway, the point is, when I was looking up all of these things, it turns out that Josh Allen lifetime before that sneak on third and fourth and one attempts, it was 29 for 31. So he'd had two failures in 31 attempts. That was the third failure in 32 attempts. So it's a 90% proposition to say, Josh Allen, you're 245 pounds, go sneak for and that was all, as you say, NGS has separated out fourth and ones. This was as good a fourth and one as you're going to get. It was a short fourth and one. So it was basically an extremely likely pickup, and they didn't get it. That's good process. Sometimes good process doesn't bounce your way. You roll with those punches, you take it on the chin, and you say, it was the right decision, we move on.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's where a lot of decisions come from, is thinking through the lens of increasing our ability to win and what are the odds here. And I think they had the odds, whether it was fourth and short, combined with the sneak, combined with they're a couple of yards away from the end zone, combined with Derrick Henry is on the other side. And, you're a little at the mercy of a coin flip. I know that, the first possession team doesn't always win in overtime, but they certainly have an advantage. We saw, the Cowboys had a walk-off this weekend. The Minnesota Vikings had a walk-off this weekend. And the one thing I don't think is a part of it is momentum and, the Titans just scored a bunch of points against us. We have to, they've got the momentum. We need to try to win it now because they'll beat us in overtime. That stuff, I think, is overrated.
Yeah,
but there are enough people that rail against momentum. I don't need to do that.
And look, all teams are not created equal. There are teams that aren't particularly good at sneaking or that have a much worse record. But Josh Allen, in particular, has been extremely good at picking those up, which makes sense given the freaking size and strength of the dude.
But Tom Brady's always like the guy that we talk about, the pinnacle of quarterback play, but also of the QB sneak. But even just the thing that Brady has brought to the table is when the two A gaps are covered, as we saw in this particular situation, he'll just check to like a quick wide zone play, and all of a sudden the team's generally outgapped outside, right? So it's the ability to know which gap to take with the sneak, but also having the run plays at your disposal to be able to hit other gaps and just take advantage of the fact that people are accounting for you as a great QB sneak guy.
I think the Titans defended it very well, but it's still a play that the Bills should have picked up. And look, it's like poker, right? You get the money in with the best hand, and that's all you can do. Sometimes the card isn't going to come out that you want, and you're going to get a bad beat, and you're going to lose the money. But if you do that enough times, if every time you get your money in the hand, you have the best, or you get your money in the pot, you have the best hand, like that's all you can do. There is still a luck element to the game, and that's just life. But all you can do is make sure that when the money goes in, you have the best hand, and over time, you will get paid off. So I think ultimately the Bills went for the right call and didn't get the reward from it.
You know what else is the right call, Sam?
What, Steve?
DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. They got you covered this week. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game. And if they do, you win $200 in free bets. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. It's that simple. If Sportsbook's not yet available in your state, DraftKings won't leave you empty-handed. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes all season long with DraftKings daily fantasy sports contests. And DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game, and you win $200 in free bets. If they win, you win. With promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, they're an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, and Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, where do you want to go next? We talk some Browns here. Baker Mayfield. Or do you want to touch on Ronnie Stanley quickly?
Okay.
Let's talk. We'll finish up with the Thursday night preview. Ronnie Stanley, Ravens starting left tackle. He's out for the season with the ankle injury, same injury he had last year. And remember last year, he got hurt. Was it a week after he signed his big contract?
Really soon afterwards.
It was like within days.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks at most. So good for Ronnie Stanley getting paid when he did. Unfortunate for Ronnie Stanley, though, that he's had to battle this injury the last couple of years.
Yeah, really sucks for him. Remember, this was a guy who got injured last season, and then it was, hey, now coming into this year, Ronnie Stanley's back, and then the great Alejandro Villanueva was going to flip to the right-hand side. And now you have two capable tackles. And then week one, it was an absolute unmitigated disaster. Villanueva turns out can't play right tackle, though there's some debate as to whether he can play left tackle anymore as well.
It's still early.
Ronnie Stanley was out there on a busted ankle and just evidently looked it was a disaster. So the two of them in that week one game combined to give up 19 total pressures, 9 from Stanley, 10 from Villanueva. And then immediately the Ravens were like, okay, we're not. This is unfair to Stanley. We need to shut him down again and get this right. Obviously, it didn't get right, and they need to refix. So that's concerning. That's anytime. I don't want to say a routine injury, but anytime an injury that wasn't obviously going to take multiple years takes multiple years, you have to get a little bit concerned about the long-term prospects.
Yeah, Stanley, again, for those that don't know, he had to become the best or second best pass blocking tackle in the league. We generally give it to David Bakhtiari and had said, hey, Bakhtiari from the Packers, he's become the best pass blocker. Ronnie Stanley was right there with him. His last full season, 2019, gave up only 10 total pressures, including the playoffs, on over 540 attempts. Stanley was continuing to get better and better. He was a good run blocker, not great, good run blocker, a very similar. I mean, he was profiling similar to the great Joe Thomas with elite pass blocking grades, good run blocking grades, and 6th overall pick, really coming good in years 3, 4, and 5 in his career. So Stanley was trending to be this top 3 left tackle. He was getting paid as such. And then again, last year only 312 snaps and then just the 1 game this year. So hoping, for Stanley, that obviously he can recover, come back. Tweeting yesterday his frustration, but also, feeling blessed that he can go get it fixed. Something, I'm paraphrasing what he was saying. But so hoping for the best for him. And then from a Ravens perspective, throws a little bit of a wrench in there. Long-term planning, not knowing what they're going to get from him going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's potentially a long-term issue for them. It's also, a short-term problem as well. Like I say, the great Alejandro Villanueva has not been great.
Has not.
And look, they're better than they were week 1, right? When they actually had Stanley, because he was hurt. Villanueva was playing on the right side. He was worse there than he's been on the left side. So you had like the worst tackle situation in the NFL in the first week. Having to adjust to not having Stanley, you got better at left tackle because Villanueva is better there than he is on the right side. And somehow you've managed to get better at right tackle by playing Patrick McCarry out there, who was like a center before that, like a backup center, suddenly kicks out and plays right tackle. And he's been, reasonably good. So now look, the flip side of that is, well, at some point you would have got Stanley back healthy, and then you would have had a really good left tackle and a pretty good right tackle. In theory, like Patrick McCarry has been a better right tackle than Villanueva has been a left tackle this year. But I would say that for the Ravens, you can say, look, right tackle is quote unquote fixed going forward this year. We're in a decent spot there based off how McCarry's played. Left tackle, though, you're now reliant on Villanueva actually holding up his end of the bargain and being, viable. And that's a fairly hit and miss prospect at this point. Like, he has a pass blocking grade on the season of 48.5. And even if you take out
the first game, Sam.
Even if you take out the week 1, there is a 28 grade in there. There's a 59 grade in there. He's been beat. And his run blocking grade isn't ideal either in all but a couple of games. So, like, if you're Baltimore,
he's been solid there. He's been solid. He has been as advertised.
Well,
I'm trying. Give me a minute to get to the rankings here. There was a minor glitch.
If you're going to toss out the week 1 game,
then you lose a big run block.
No. If you're going to toss out the week 1 pass blocking game, then you probably have to toss out the week 2 run blocking game and end up with just a meh. So my point is that
stop throwing games out. He is what he is.
Well, okay, then he's not a good pass blocker and he's an okay run blocker, which is the opposite of everything we know about Villanueva.
My counterpoint of the 81 offensive tackles with at least 100 snaps this year, he's 48th. He ranks 48th. I promised you all offseason a mid-tier left tackle. That is exactly what Alejandro Villanueva has been. I said the value of Alejandro Villanueva is the average.
In one of the most offensive line friendly systems in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you throw out week 1 and he's at left tackle. He is exactly mid-tier.
So you throw out his worst game and put him in the best situation in the NFL, and he ranks 48th. And let's claiming that as a success.
Now he's 31st. You throw out week 1, he's 31st out of 79.
Okay.
He is, as advertised,
he is
a valuable average left tackle.
A problem for them.
There are certain games where he's been problem-like. That is what an average left tackle brings. Certain games. That's the reality of it. Mike Remmers has been an average tackle. Riley Reif has been an average tackle. They have games where they get whooped, they get beat up on, but that's part of the position.
Do you think that right now Alejandro Villanueva is as good as Riley Reif?
I don't know. Where's Reif this? Yeah, he's ranked better than Reif. Yeah. They're about the same guy. They're similar. They're valuable players.
Okay.
They're valuable players because what you don't want to be is the bottom of the list, the 2 Raiders, Brandon Parker, Alex Leatherwood, Rashad Hill, Liam Eichenberg,
Nobody
who's
wants
played
to be
guard and
Alex
tackle.
Leatherwood,
Storm
obviously.
Norton. You're trying to avoid the Storm Norton situation where he has been detrimental to an otherwise solid line with the Chargers. Anyway, enough Ali Villanueva talk. Best wishes to Ronnie Stanley in his recovery, and we'll keep an eye on this Ravens offensive line going forward. And if there are certain games where Villanueva, look, he's a big dude. It's tough, pad level when you're that big. there are some games where he gets beat up as a pass blocker. All right, let's go Monday Night Football. Browns and Broncos, Thursday Night Football, previewing the game. Thank you for clarifying that in the secret chat that we have here. Browns, Broncos, Baker is out. Let's talk Baker just a little bit here because we never talk about Baker Mayfield. Browns have a serious decision to make, and I think we've thrown Kirk Cousins comps out there. We've done all these various things. My relationship with Baker Mayfield is
what are they? Full disclosure?
Yeah.
You have a relationship? Is this like a?
It's complicated on Facebook. Like it's Facebook complicated.
Yeah. Or like your stages of separation. How many Kevin Bacons away from Baker Mayfield are you?
How close am I to Baker Mayfield? Not that close. I don't think I have. It's not like me and The Rock, like where my high school coach's girlfriend's niece married him.
No,
what I mean?
you're not that close.
It's not like The Rock.
Yeah.
Where we're a couple degrees of separation. Because me and my high school coach were tight. His girlfriend's niece married The Rock. And calls my high school coach Uncle Frank. That's close.
Feels like you could have got more benefit out of that.
No benefit.
No.
I could be like an extra in one of his movies or something.
Yeah, you should do that.
Maybe one of like the
how many extra sponsors?
Like a big
like 10 people are
henchman that he beats up or kills or something like that in some action film.
You do have a limited scope of roles for. Well, I guess if you're an extra and you're just playing with perspective, you just stand further back than everybody else. It would still work.
No, there's got to be some room for giant roles and stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's a smaller role than just the room where we just need bodies. I just need bodies. True. I need 50 bodies that stand over there. You can't be one of those.
You do that perspective thing.
You can't be one of those unless you stand 10 feet further back than the rest of the bodies.
I can do that. I'm skilled enough to stand 10 feet back. I got that skill. Anyway, I don't have the connection to Baker Mayfield. My relationship with Baker Mayfield that I'm describing is, we believed in him. We believed in him. There's a lot of data that pointed toward Baker as the guy in that draft class. Even coming into the season, let's reset a little bit. Coming into the season, I think properly declared, if you're asking who's been the most consistent quarterback, strangely, out of that group between Baker, Lamar, and Josh Allen in that draft class, it's been Baker because he was better at the start than both of those guys. And he hasn't had any, despite what 2019 looked like, grading-wise, it wasn't a disastrous season. That he graded better in that season than Lamar graded as a rookie, and then Josh Allen graded in his first 2 years. So Baker's been strangely consistent. But he hasn't had peaks that are anything close to what Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson have brought to the table. I also think all that discussion we had earlier, Baker, the 8-man box, it's like Lamar, teams play an 8-man box because of Lamar.
Right.
Teams play an 8-man box because of Derrick Henry in Tennessee. They play against the Browns because of the scheme and Chubb and Hunt. Lamar gives himself more favorable passing situations. So all of that stuff is on the table, and all I'm saying is, last year at this time, I was ready to quit Baker Mayfield. I actually said on air one time, Case Keenum might be a better fit right now for the Browns.
People are saying that again, by the way. This is where we've got to.
I was wrong last year. Baker turned it around, and now what I'm trying to figure out, he's got the shoulder injury. He's out right now. Is it the injury? Has he not progressed? Can he carry a team? I mean, all of these questions that the Browns are asking, and we won't learn more information this week, but hopefully he comes back next week and we'll see how much he handles. He's got a torn left labrum,
fully torn,
that he's going to have to play through.
Yeah. So I tweeted during yesterday maybe that Baker playing through this injury could cost him a lot of money because the Browns are in this situation where they haven't fully bought into Baker Mayfield yet because he hasn't got the contract that Josh Allen's been handed. They were willing to let it ride into this season, see what this season presented in terms of new evidence, and then make the determination because they weren't quite sure what the hell Baker Mayfield is yet. No, I don't think anybody really is, right? Well, no, that's not true. There's a lot of people that are 100% sure that Baker Mayfield sucks, but I'm of the opinion that those people are dumb. Baker Mayfield doesn't suck. We don't know how good he is or how bad he is, but I see you're finding the nuanced social media takes. There's a whole world of suck, and Baker Mayfield isn't there. Anyway, so the point is, you're in this binary world of a front office or GM where you have a quarterback here, and the question presented to you is, does he get $40 million a year in his next contract, or does he not? Because those are basically your two options. You hand him a monster contract, or you walk away, press the reset button, and go again. And I don't think they're sure what they want to do. Now, their only additional evidence is going to be this season now most of which will involve Baker Mayfield playing through a fully torn labrum, albeit in his non-throwing shoulder. But as you know, some giant dude talked about, it's your glove hand, you keep it in, whatever that does to your throwing mechanism, motion, whatever. Anyway, if you're Baker Mayfield, and I said this before he was ruled out for this week, but you might be better off from a contract point of view of just shutting down, being like, I'm not playing 12 games with an injured shoulder that's going to make me look terrible. I am going to shut it down, get to surgery, get healthy, and you have all the evidence you need, right? Figure it out from there. If I play, whatever it is, 12 games with a torn shoulder and look like crap, okay, you'll know it was played through injury and there'll be some kind of asterisk next to that, but there's no way that doesn't influence you negatively in the contract negotiations. It can't not do, right? Because you were already on the fence. So if you're teetering on this fence, not knowing which way to go, and the only thing influencing this in terms of new information is negative, how can it not topple you over on the bad side?
Yeah, because we're even sitting here, even when you know the context, it still influences how you feel.
Yeah.
Right? So even when...
It can only damage your perception.
I always use weather as an explainer for quarterback play or whatever, right? So even when you see a guy play in a couple weeks ago, Josh Allen played in a rainstorm, and he threw 3 passes right to linebackers. I don't know if the rain actually affected it, but it affected his grade, and it's I remember it. I know it happened in a rainstorm, but sometimes 3 weeks later, you're just looking at the stats or you're looking at the results, and it's oh, here's this thing. It's a lot of turnover-worthy plays, and you don't remember the exact context. If Baker goes and plays through the shoulder and plays 75% of the production that he would normally get, even though you could say, oh, he had a shoulder, he had this, he had that, but you still look at the numbers and the production and the results. So yeah, it influences your brain for sure. What I'm asking, I'm looking at quarterback APYs now, so average per year with quarterbacks. Why does $40 million have to be the question?
It is.
Can it just be like Derek Carr? Derek Carr signed a contract a couple years ago that seemed a little crazy, right? He got paid a ton of money, where at the time he was not the top quarterback. The highest he's been as far as percentage of the cap is 13.7. That was in 2018. His cap number was 25. He's never reached 25 as a cap number, right? So at the time, is this the value in being early? Are the Raiders benefiting from somewhat being early because they've got what now looks like a reasonable Derek Carr deal? The other side of it is, well, the Rams and the Eagles both signed Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, respectively,
right,
to deals that 3 years from now aren't going to look egregious. Now they do, at the moment. Now they do, but they're not going to be egregious 3 years from now, other than the fact that neither guy plays for their team, and that was the risk associated with it. I don't think it has to be $40 million, but can you look at the landscape right now and say, look, you're Derek Carr level, or whatever this looks like, QB 12 to 15 as far as money goes. We're going to give you 25 to 30. Are you satisfied with that?
To which you will say no.
And we're on record saying Dak's not worth 30. And I think at the time he wasn't. And I would say that I think we're probably looking at the next 2 years too much. It's like 30 million. Who's making 30 million? Nobody's making 30 million. Because at the time, nobody was. But when you look 4 and 5 years in advance, 30 million isn't going to be a whole lot. 35, right. 40 million at some point isn't going to feel like
these
a whole
numbers
lot.
Only go up. So if you're holding people to a price point at the time they said it, that number is only going up the further you go into the future.
Yeah.
So
I think it was fair for us to say Dak Prescott in 2018 should not have been the highest paid quarterback or top three.
Now that number would be 45 million.
Yeah, and now Dak's APY is 40, and he's proven that he's probably worth that. He is worth that.
There is an interesting scenario where Baker Mayfield comes back after whatever it is. So this is the other thing. This is not, okay, his injury is bad enough that he's not playing this week, but this is not something that gets healed in the next couple of weeks. He is going to play through this for the entirety of the season and then get off-season surgery, presumably to fix it permanently. But this is going to be a thing all the way through this year. So there's a world where Mayfield plays, doesn't play well because of it, and weirdly, the only thing coming, the new information is all bad, so it actually ends up depressing his value. And the Browns are actually able to get him on a cheap deal, which for them starts to make it actually make sense, right? The Browns don't want to hand Baker Mayfield a Josh Allen contract. But if Baker Mayfield plays badly because he was playing through a torn shoulder, and all of a sudden they can go, well, now you're not even, like, $45 million isn't even on the table now. The number we're starting from is, whatever, 32. Now what do you say?
Yeah.
Like, there's a world, actually, where this ends up benefiting both sides. Like, this could actually be the thing that creates the mid-tier quarterback contract that we've been talking about for a decade.
So let's say, and I think that's definitely realistic. Now let's say, even if he was healthy, and the Browns probably still had a difficult decision, even if he's healthy and producing. What do you think the market is for Baker? You know, the two questions would be, well, what's your alternative, Browns? What are you going to do? And as much as I preach that you've got 32 capable starters around the world, there is a difference between starter 15 and starter 30, right? There is a difference, even if it's not as great as maybe 1 to 15. What is your alternative, Browns? Are you going the Marcus Mariota route? Are you going to continue? Like, if you got a Jared Goff in your building, do you feel like the Lions situation is bad, but your situation's good? Can you get the same out of Goff that the Rams got, and is that good enough? So what do the Browns do? And if Baker did hit the open market, are there enough desperate teams? You know, what is his price? Like, how many teams are actually competing for Baker Mayfield's service? I think is a fair question, because I don't think there are that many.
Yeah, I do think there is. So I think at this point, data would probably tell you to move on from Baker Mayfield if your two choices were cut bait and start over, or hand Baker Mayfield a Josh Allen contract. Is that fair?
If
those are your two options.
If the option's Josh Allen contract, $43 million per year for many years, $100 million guaranteed,
or
yes, the data would say don't do that.
Right. So I think the data will probably say to move away from that deal. But I know the Browns are obviously one of the most progressive teams in the NFL in terms of using data, understanding analytics, just general smart decision making. But they are also a team that has more institutional scarring when it comes to the quarterback position than probably any other in the NFL. They have that jersey that's like 9 feet long with the names of all the quarterbacks. It started with Tim Couch when they came back.
Tim Couch had an encouraging start to his career.
That Baker Mayfield ended. Mayfield stopped the names, right? Do you want to voluntarily get back on that horse knowing how it can go? Now, look, it's different now. It's way easier to find a quarterback now than it was when Tim Couch was your option, right?
Yeah.
So it isn't the same, but from an institutional memory standpoint, like, this team, more than any others, knows what can happen if you say, no, we're going to press hard reset because we know it's easy to find a quarterback. Like, it is a risk, and it's a risk that this team must know as acutely as any other in the NFL. So I think they want to find a way of making a deal that keeps Baker Mayfield there but doesn't, like, you know, hand him a contract that right now he probably hasn't justified.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I also wonder how much they look and they're like, Andrew Berry was a part of a little bit of that, but it's like, I'm Andrew Berry. I'm right. The new regime. I'm the Brown. I have faith. I've built this great roster. I've been a part of this. I've been a part of this rebuild with Baker and getting this team back to the playoffs and getting them into this division race for multiple years now. I'm a new Browns exec. I'm the new Browns, and I have faith in my ability to get the next quarterback. The question then is, how do you get that next quarterback?
And also, by the way, next year doesn't look good from quarterback. You know, college quarterbacks coming into the league. Obviously, the Browns aren't planning on picking top 10 or anywhere you normally get those elite quarterbacks anyway. But it's not. It looks like a challenging year to be trying to identify a new rookie quarterback from nowhere.
But again, how many teams are actually desperate?
Sure,
because there's so many teams that have a QB in the years 2 or 3 where they're still undecided.
But that probably does send you back to the free agent market and trying to find somebody that's capable of winning with that team from there, which is doable, but it's just a hell of a risk that you don't necessarily need to take for a team that thinks it's entering, you know, a Super Bowl window.
I wonder if the Browns, like, the other options would be, like, if you're that confident in your ecosystem as the Browns, and the Eagles are looking to move on from
which we'll learn
Hurts.
A lot about in terms of how Case Keenum plays.
Sure,
if Case Keenum comes in and plays
even though there are a third of their active rosters on the injury report, so
which,
I don't know.
To be honest, helps them, right? Like, almost the worst thing that can happen for them is, like, Case Keenum comes in, plays really well in one game, And all of a sudden you're like, well, there's obviously no difference between Baker Mayfield and Case Keenum, and we can just plug any old stooge in here.
We have way more evidence than what's going to happen Thursday night with Case Keenum. We have one.
We also know fully well like what one game and just that kind of narrative can do to people.
We just have one, but we're not narrative people here. We don't buy into that. We have one full good season of Case Keenum and several years where he's looked like a high-end backup.
Yeah.
So I think that's what Case Keenum is, regardless of what you see Thursday night. I did want to wrap that point up with. So my last point was going to be like, if you're what is the strategy? If you are a team that is forward-looking and say we either have a top 8 quarterback or we have 0 quarterbacks, how do you get that next guy? Is it continually drafting? Is it plucking Jalen Hurts? Right, the Eagles have 3 top 10 picks. If they want to move on from him, saying you know what, put Jalen Hurts in our ecosystem for 2 years while he's still under a rookie contract. Or give me Daniel Jones, right? The Giants are going to move on from Daniel Jones. We could take Daniel Jones for the last 2 years of his rookie contract, make something of him while we're looking for the next guy. Is there a world where that's the play for a team, is grabbing these other quarterbacks who are, in the middle of the pack, but but is that a lateral move? But is it a lateral move at a cheaper price?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of these fun questions here.
Jones would be really interesting for them next year.
Don't you think? Like, Jones has never had a good offensive line.
Yeah.
And now he does have his best group of playmakers. He just hasn't had them all together with the Giants. More specifically, Thursday Night Football, this Browns-Broncos game, both weird. They're both 3-3. Browns have lost 2 heartbreakers and got beat up pretty bad by the Cardinals. Broncos started 3-0. They've fallen back to 3-3. Defense has lost some luster after, as a team, they only gave up 26 points in their first 3 games. Where do you stand on this one?
Man, the Browns got battered so badly in the last 10 days. They went from being like almost fully healthy to everybody's missing.
I know.
They had like a third of the team on the injury report. It was madness. Obviously no Baker Mayfield, but a lot of other people as well. I do think that
line's down to 2, by the way. Browns favored by 2 at home.
The Browns' offensive line being banged up, I think, was a real issue for Baker Mayfield. Not because necessarily, in part because they weren't good, but also in part because Baker Mayfield is in this world now where he's terrified of his own shoulder injury. He's reacting to pressure. Like, he's back to where that terminal problem he had, where he was feeling pressure even when it wasn't there because Greg Robinson was his left tackle. That's the headspace he's in right now, and that makes everything worse. Case Keenum probably won't be like that. Like, Case Keenum will probably treat the offensive line on its merits and let it sink or swim based off that.
Which means when a player is going to just willingly play under pressure like that, you just don't know what's going to happen.
But it's probably a good thing in terms of, like, if your offensive line isn't going to be as strong as it normally is, Case Keenum might actually be a better bet than Baker Mayfield in terms of surviving that. Then you have the fact that, look, Denver doesn't have a great pass rush. Von Miller's really good, but if you can take away Von Miller, nobody else is winning.
Yeah.
So, okay, you don't have a great offensive, you don't have your starters necessarily, but like double team the dude all game long, and then nobody else is going to beat you. And then you have a free target in terms of that secondary. Shooting gallery, that's the phrase I was looking for.
From there are injuries on both sides here, though. The Browns have both tackles again, questionable at best, I'd say, with Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin. Players on both sides of the ball, but Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both out in this particular game.
D'Ernest Johnson. D'Ernest? How are we going with that?
D'Ernest?
That's awkward.
I don't know.
Feels like a D'Ernest.
D'Ernest.
Should probably check, though.
Yeah,
particularly. Well, they'll say it enough times on Thursday.
You think they'll be right?
I don't know.
We've heard a lot of mispronunciations from the national media, I think, unless we're just missing something. But the national media.
Okereke.
But from a Broncos perspective, you also have both linebackers. Their linebackers are all beat up. Garrett Bowles, limited participation at left tackle. Teddy Bridgewater, Noah Fant, they should be fine. They should be there. Melvin Gordon. But they've been banged up as well. They've got some issues on their side of the ball. Do the Broncos just come back down to earth, man, or is this just a bad stretch? I did think that their overall roster would look better, and I thought they'd play at least closer to what they did in the first 3 weeks. Last 3 weeks especially last week, they just got dominated by the Raiders.
Yeah, and look, the Steelers were able to run the ball on them as well. Like, the defense has been maybe a bigger disappointment over the last few weeks than the offense. I think
Coverage grades really quick. Last 3 weeks, 44 as a team. 44, 32, 38. That was the big surprise.
We expected the offense to struggle more, but it did feel like the defense was for real. And even against better teams, they would show up. And it just hasn't. Like, their defense has been wrecked the last couple of weeks. And the offense did kind of what we thought it might, which is all of a sudden Teddy Bridgewater can't get it done against better teams and throws the ball into harm's way, and generally looked like he was struggling, and they couldn't pull their way out of it.
Yeah, I'm disappointed with that secondary right now.
But this is one of those games where so many people are injured. It's hard to make any sense of it.
Yeah.
Like what the hell do the Browns even look like now? They've got none of their identity remains, right? Their identity on offense was the best offensive line in the NFL, 2 of the top 5 running backs in the league, Baker Mayfield, and the receivers that they have that he can try and get the ball to off the back of all that play action. None of that exists. All of it is gone. The offensive line is missing both tackles. The running game, 2 of the top 5 running backs, neither of them are playing. So the guy whose name we can't even say is playing is the only real starting running back. Baker Mayfield isn't even there. It's Case Keenum's show. Like, we have no clue what this looks like.
Great.
None.
We'll just see what happens.
So it could be terrible, and even if it is, the Denver defense is all of a sudden bad, having looked good. So, yeah, I'd love to have some penetrating analysis as to which way this game was going to go, but I got nothing.
The other injury factor, though, for the Broncos, so much of what we liked about the Broncos was all of their receivers coming in, right? Jerry Jeudy's been hurt. You lose KJ Hamler. Of course, you've got Tim Patrick picking up the slack. And he's good, again, as always, never dropping passes and always making big plays. You just don't have that receiver advantage that you once had, where it seemed like, man, how are you going to cover all these Broncos? And we just did the PFF Daily today talking about the best offenses in the NFL, and we just went team by team with all the tier 1 offenses, and we're like 3 playmakers, 4 playmakers, 4 playmakers. Man, the Broncos it would feel better if Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler were out there with Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton and Noah Fant. But they're still good. Their depth is keeping them close in this respect. As far as I think they could still move the ball through the air. Teddy Bridgewater with a 74 grade. He's settled in right where he should be. Right. I mean, is this the Teddy Bridgewater we somewhat expected? The turnover-worthy plays are now back up to where they were before. Yeah. He showed some promise in those first few weeks. 2 game grades under 60 in the last 3 weeks. I feel like Bridgewater has come back and
pretty much
settled into the bridge type of quarterback that we thought he was.
This is one of those games that's really interesting to just look around PFF Greenline. And PFF Greenline is the kind of betting tool we have on the website that leverages all of the data, gives you all kinds of interesting information for a game like this.
Could you get 25% off that?
You could. I believe you could. If you use the promo code NFL Pod, you would get 25% off any subscription, which would open up Greenline, unlock it, remove the little green locks that shows you all the data. So for this game, all the money is coming in on Denver. 87% of the cash is coming in on Denver. But Greenline actually sees significant value in the Browns. We have the line at almost 3. We have an edge towards towards putting money on the Browns because of that. And you can sort of see the way the line has been moving, over the last few days and all those kinds of things. It's a fascinating game to kind of dive into because of how absolutely chaotic it is. But I think because of that, it's going to be like a fun one to watch. Not for the reasons we thought it might be before everybody on both sides got injured, but I think it should still be a fun game.
All right, so Browns by 2. Where are you going with this one?
I don't know what we're going to see from the Browns. I think because Denver are also missing some players and aren't that good to begin with, I think I'll still lean on the Browns, but I mean, this could go anywhere, right?
I'm gonna lean Browns as well. I am looking forward to this game. I also made the statement the other night. I think part of the reason why we're seeing so many exciting football games is this more aggressive 4th down nature that a lot of teams are buying into. The Browns are going to exploit those advantages as much as possible, maybe even more with Case Keenum at quarterback. We will see. But I'm looking forward to the game. So I'll take the Browns covering the, as of right now, 2-point line. We'll see a solid outing from Case Keenum, trusting that Stefanski scheme to protect him in this one game, and then can't wait to get back to more Baker discussion and, more data points, figure out what he is next year, in the next few weeks.
The next few weeks, you think that's when it's going to happen?
It's all going to come together.
All right.
After we said, can't even look at it. It's just a torn labrum. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually a throwing injury, not a contact injury. I mean,
a lot of people are like, don't even let your quarterback try and attempt to tackle. Like, get the hell out of the way. Just walk to the sideline slowly after you throw an interception.
There's some truths to that.
On the other hand, like one of the most iconic plays in Big Ben's career is the toe tap tackle to stop a touchdown in the playoff game after it was a fumble against Nick.
I mean, if it's the playoffs.
Oh, the playoffs. That's when you risk the injury?
Yes.
Okay.
Like if it's the playoffs.
Regular season, don't even try a tackle. Playoffs, dive in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there we go. Anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning in. It's the Wednesday show. And we appreciate everybody always being here. Don't forget, you get that 25% off using the promo code NFLPOD. 25% off any PFF subscription right now. It's our promo code just for you. NFLPOD. 25% off. Thanks to everybody for being here. We'll be back here tomorrow previewing all of the Week 7 NFL action.